Started.
Okay.
We are thrilled to have Angela Spearman here again. She's done several special edition webinars for us on this platform. In addition to everything else she does, she has the drop-in group for Betrayed Partners on Sunday night. She's been hosting for years. We think about 6, but we haven't kept track. And separately, she is the facilitator for the online work group for Betrayed Partners on our website. I will put links to those things in the chat for those of you that are joining us live. But Angela, I'm always grateful to have the opportunity to learn more from you. So I'm going to turn it over to you. You can share a little bit about yourself and your practice and where you're located and who can contact you, but then we'll get started.
Yeah, well, before I forget, the next Betrayed Partner work group through Seeking Integrity that I'll be running starts next week. And that is a 12-week course. So this is your chance. There won't be another one for the next 3 months. So if you are wanting to sign up, this is definitely your chance. Starts next week. I would love to have you. And I have so many people tell me it is a game changer for them. People come into that group and say, I had never told anybody what I'd been going through. I was really apprehensive. Now that I'm in this group, I'm really glad that I did because now I don't have to go through this alone. And I want to actually heal. I want to get back to work and do what I can for myself. Seeking Integrity also has really great Betrayed Partner retreats that are just amazing. Just so many resources. So if you found Seeking Integrity, you have found a gem. And I'm really, really glad that you're here. So my name is Angela Spearman. I am a CSAT, primarily work with betrayed partners. I do occasionally work with individuals with problematic sexual behaviors, whether it's compulsivity or addiction or co-occurring issues. So I do have a variety of backgrounds that I'm pulling from when I give these webinars and these presentations. And while I've titled this Betrayal Induced Existential Crisis, what you're going to find as we go through this is that much of this information is actually very relevant to any human being. Any type of a crisis that you go through, you're going to start experiencing some of these existential questions. So whether it's a grief and loss of a pet like Tammy recently experienced, or just seeing your kids struggle in school, you'd be amazed at what kind of things can create this sort of existential experience. So I wanted to put something together because I think there's some aspects to this that if we start talking more about it, it will help us to navigate and help us to understand why we are afraid of certain things or what kind of thought processes we have that's maybe making our situation worse than it has to be. We're already in a lot of pain. And so if there's anything that we can do to reduce the pain and suffering, we want to find those strategies. And so that's really what I would like to talk about tonight. So the betrayal-induced existential crisis really is relevant to everybody. This picture here, what I hear from betrayed partners often is they see something like this before discovery and they think, oh, how sweet. Look at this elderly couple out for a walk. They must have had so many wonderful memories over their lifetime. They probably have great stories that they can share. I wonder what their secret is. All these wonderful nostalgic type of reactions to a picture like this. But after discovery of infidelity, they are often seeing pictures like this and reporting to me when they come to my office or when they're in my work groups. And they'll say something like, after discovering my partner's infidelity, now I see something like this and I immediately think, ugh, one of them is cheating on the other. Or, there's all kinds of secrets and lies there, and one of them is cheating, right? And so there's this a cynicism and a bitterness that comes along as a result of the betrayal. And it's sort of what I call a global mistrust. It's created in the relationship, but it starts extending outward into every area of life, even places where you wouldn't expect it, right? So betrayed partners don't want to see that picture and feel cynical and bitter. That's something that's happening within them. And we want to talk a little bit about why that would be happening. So these questions here are questions that I hear from so many betrayed partners. How could my partner fill in the blank? Can my partner love me and still do these things? Did my partner ever love me? Isn't my partner a monster or a sociopath or a narcissist? Good people don't do these things. Why did this happen? And what I understand about this work is that when I hear questions like this, they're actually grief statements being posed as questions. It's like asking, why do some children die of cancer? How does that happen? We all know that we're never going to have a good answer for some of these things, but we can't help but ask those questions. It doesn't feel right. It feels unjust. We don't want this for ourselves. So the questions behind those grief statements, what's really affecting us are questions like, is this universe a friendly place? Can people be trusted? Are people good or bad? Is the world safe? Can I ever be loved? And given that these are existential in nature, the same questions that anybody experiencing any type of grief or loss, right? You lose a pet and you're starting to wonder, can I ever enjoy another pet, right? I mean, these questions, the reason why they're existential is it's related to the human experience. And people have been asking these questions from the beginning of time. What is the purpose of life? Right. And so these are huge questions. And because they're such big, difficult, complex questions, we know that we may not ever arrive at any type of answer with certainty. I don't think certainty is waiting in the wings for us on any of these questions. And so maybe a better process would be examining how I ask these questions. How do I relate to questions like this? What do I do with questions like this rather than trying to arrive at the answer for these questions? As betrayed partners, we're faced with dilemmas. You know, is what my partner did, was it a choice or was it a disease? Can I trust them or do I have to distrust them? Are they a monster? Are they a victim? Am I operating from my perception or from deception? There's all of these really overwhelming questions that are swimming around in our head and even running in the background when we're trying to focus on things like work or parenting. These big, scary, sometimes unanswerable questions are there and they're exhausting. They wear on you. They create sort of a like a burnout sensation. And you get so overwhelmed that your brain just tries to start to simplify. And when your brain tries to simplify, we try to make everything black and white. So it's either good or it's bad. It's right or it's wrong. It's all or nothing. That's what we call black and white thinking. But we know that the world isn't black and white. It doesn't work like that. But our brains are just doing that to try to simplify. It's hard enough to try to focus at work or try to parent when we have all these big, difficult questions. So it's not any wonder that our brain is trying to help us cope by simplifying things down. It makes sense. So what that leads to is a thinking style called rigid thinking. And that rigid thinking has a lot of impact on us and on our relationships, but it looks like the inflexibility is difficulty adjusting to new situations or difficulty making decisions. Resistance to change is a very strong preference for established routines. Difficulty seeing alternatives. This is makes it so hard to consider that maybe the perspective we have isn't the whole picture, right? It's difficult to imagine that maybe there's a different solution, there's a different path, or maybe there's a different way of understanding things. The all or nothing thinking, we're not recognizing the complexity of the situation. stubbornness, right? Difficulty with ambiguity. We really want certainty. We're very uncomfortable with uncertainty. But the thing about certainty is things are always uncertain. We just have the illusion of certainty. And when you go through a crisis, you're more aware of how uncertain and unpredictable the world actually is. You can make educated guesses, you can look at patterns, but ultimately there's absolutely no way to know if that pattern will continue. And then repetitive thoughts. These thoughts just come up because our rigid thinking and our black and white, we're just trying to keep everything as simple as possible. So we keep telling ourselves the same thing over and over and over again, which is also exhausting. But the impact of that is destructive, right? It's the emotional distress leads to anxiety and anger and frustration, fatigue. It wears us out. Relationships are difficult because we can't see other people's viewpoints. We often lack empathy. We have strain in our relationships. Then with the problem solving, it makes it very difficult for us to find creative solutions because we can only see things one way. We can't imagine it any other way. And then for the mental health conditions, it often leads to anxiety disorders, as well as many other physical ailments as well. So let's look at a betrayal scenario of rigid thinking. The fact here is my partner consumed a lot of porn. The black and white thinking is I'm not pretty or sexual or fill in the blank enough. Another possible belief is that my partner is a pervert, or everyone watches porn, or I will never be happy or wanted or safe. These are all beliefs that we have. They're not facts. So we start with a fact and then we start forming beliefs and expectations based on maybe things that we've experienced in the past. But if you're condensing everything down to black and white, then you see the beliefs that you're holding and say, well, I hold this belief, that is what's true. And so we hold it as fact rather than as belief. But it's really not that simple, is it? So here's an example. I want to kind of move us out of betrayal trauma and start looking at some other examples in life. When you look at this picture, ask yourself what's happening in this image. It could be scary. It could be sad. It could be dangerous. Or it could be rescue. It could be providing. It could be offering a life-saving vaccine, right? There's so many things that might be happening in this picture, but we often form assumptions on what we think is happening in this image. So the following slides, I would like everybody to consider that, well, let me sort of introduce this concept. Because I see so much rigid thinking with clients who come to my office or in participants in work groups, I've created this way of saying, okay, when you say something to me out loud, I'm going to ask you, is that statement untrue but helpful? In that case, it's maybe wishful thinking. There may be some betrayal blindness going on, some kind of a cognitive distortion. Usually it's a coping strategy. It's some way to sort of reduce things down and not have to deal with everything all at once. So there's truth, but maybe not all the truth, or part truth, but really helpful. And so we're just not going to think about how untrue the rest of the beliefs are, right? So that's the wishful thinking. That's untrue, but helpful. We all know what untrue and unhelpful is, right? That's the deception, that's manipulation, it's gaslighting. The true and unhelpful, the orange quadrant, these are these very cruel realities. So if I maybe was raised with a very critical parent, I may have had a lot of experiences in my life of feeling like I am not a good enough person, right? I may have had many messages given to me that I mess things up. I'm not very graceful. Well, it may be true that I'm not a very graceful person, right? Maybe I'm kind of clumsy, right? But is it helpful for me to see myself as not graceful or clumsy or not lovable? Right? So you can have something that's maybe a little bit of truth from lots of past experiences, but that's only part of the truth. I'm also very wise and very good at coming up with strategies for how to navigate an obstacle course when I'm on ropes courses, right? I mean, like, so to say that I'm not graceful because of all these past experiences, sometimes that's true. I can be very clumsy also, right? So it's part of truth, but it's not helpful if you're only looking at that part of the truth, the painful wound part, right? The wound messages. Then in the blue quadrant, we've got true and helpful. And with this, we're acknowledging I have perceptions and my perceptions are not 100% of reality. So I wonder what other perceptions there are. I have fears and I can be honest with myself about my fears. I can be honest with myself, this radical honesty that maybe right now it's not safe to trust my partner, right? That's true and helpful when I use it in a healthy way, right? So this quadrant of understanding that our thoughts, all of the thoughts that come through our minds, can really fit into some of these quadrants. And when we stop and pay attention to what that might look like, it can help us feel more empowered. Our thoughts are not the complete reality. So maybe we can be skeptical of our thoughts, right? We can consider what's helpful or unhelpful about our thoughts, what's true and what's untrue. So what I'd like to do, the next several slides can be very serious and heavy in nature. Hopefully nothing terribly triggering, but these are images that sort of show a bigger picture of the world that's not black and white. Things just aren't simple. Things are very complex. And for us to be able to hold that tension is an important skill that leads to resilience, right? So if any of these pictures you just need to kind of stand up and stretch while you're watching, please by all means do what you need to do to take care of yourself. So instead of a black and white world, we have this scenario: same day, same hospital. Both are true. Both are real. This is the world that we live in. One family has this view of water, the other family has this view of water. Same world. These are not in different dimensions. These pictures could have been taken on the exact same day in the same world. Maybe one family is experiencing loss by fires, while another family is enjoying a beautiful meal with loved ones and friends. Everyone here looks safe and relaxed, right? Same world. This is true, real picture. And so is this. Both are true. Both are real. So what do we do with these big, complex, and somewhat unanswerable questions? Our fears, our longings, our grief, how overwhelming this is, the questions that we start asking, what do we do with this? What is the purpose of life even? Welcome to the existential crisis. This is why we are so overwhelmed. And it's difficult to see pictures like that. It's difficult to hold the tension that both of these very extremes can be very real and very true all at the same time. We can try to shield ourselves from all the harsh realities, from the complex nature of life and of humanity. We can go about life like this, or we can start practicing flexible thinking. So flexible thinking is when we start to say, okay, there's a lot of uncertainty in the world. There's a lot of questions we're never going to know the answers to. But I also understand that for me to shut down and to live in cynicism and bitterness will leave me feeling hopeless and despairing, and it's not the life I want for myself. So flexible thinking is a strategy. It's a primary antidote to cynicism and bitterness, creates more hopefulness, helps us realize, okay, whatever it is that I'm thinking and experiencing right now, it's only a small part of reality. So it's okay, I'm okay. I also want to introduce to you a concept that I found in a book called Hope for Cynics. The author is Jamil Zaki. Fantastic book. I'll introduce some concepts in it here. But what he says is that we think cynicism is going to protect us. We think it's going to help us recognize when somebody's lying to us or keep us from being hurt. But actually, what it's doing is that it's creating assumptions that nobody can be trusted. And that itself is a form of distorting our perceptions. So instead of swinging away from all trusting to never trusting and being cynical and bitter, he offers up the idea of hopeful skepticism or healthy skepticism. And that is a healthier balance of being able to hold that tension of how I wish things were with how things might already be, and not really being able to know. So cynicism is assuming that people are selfish or bad, while the hopeful skepticism questions our assumptions, not discounting them, but we're at least being skeptical of our assumptions, right? We're making room for the possibility that maybe somebody might be trustworthy, right? Somebody might be able to come through. Cynicism leads us to react from past hurt and fears that we have, while the hopeful skepticism is responding out of curiosity. We take a deep breath, we pause, we say, I don't want to jump to any conclusions. I'm skeptical of my assumptions, so I'm going to wait and see. I'm going to observe. I'm going to take time to observe. Cynicism closes down any possibility and trust, while the hopeful skepticism says, you know what? I'm going to take a calculated risk. I will take evidence-based trust actions. It's cautious, it's skeptical, but it's still taking a healthy risk, right? So trying to determine how much risk can I take here. I loved this quote by Anita Brookner, and I'm sorry if it's in a section where you can't read it, but she says, cynicism is what passes for insight when courage is lacking. Wow, come on. Oh. So here's what this might look like. Instead of the old possible belief, I'm not fill in the blank enough. A new possible belief would be my partner would have consumed porn no matter who they were partnered with. It wasn't about me, right? For whatever reasons that they found themselves on that track, right? That life path. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to be a porn addict, right? So for all the reasons, whatever it is, it's not about me. Old possible belief, my partner's a pervert. New possible belief, well, my partner sometimes struggles with terrible things, also for many reasons. But I wanted to put a little note on here, just because we're choosing to stop being cynical and blaming and shaming and calling names doesn't mean you're choosing to stay in the relationship with that person. Okay, I don't want to give any of those impressions. So one of the strategies that I like to use whenever I am dealing with a tremendous amount of uncertainty, either for myself or with my clients, it's a 3-step strategy that I use. And it starts with examining our thoughts. So shifting thoughts to more helpful thoughts, step 1. Step 2 is a somatic tenderness, because my nervous system is going to be all on guard, trying to be cautious. Things are uncertain. I don't know what to expect, right? So that creates uncertainty in your nervous system. So you've got to do some somatic tenderness. And then finally, taking action. Okay, so one of my favorite phrases, and this is something that Dr. Kevin Skinner said, and I'll never forget it. He said, he said this to a betrayed partner, you're already okay. You just don't realize it yet. Oh, yes, yes, I'm already okay. Just don't realize it yet. So that's shifting into some of my helpful thoughts. Then it's really important for me to know that when I am trying to hold the tension of a lot of uncertainty and complexity, things can intensify before they actually calm down. And so I remind myself to write it out. And some of my strategies for writing it out is hugging a pet or a friend or one of my kids, going for a walk, stretching, breathing, all of the things that can start creating feelings of safety in my nervous system. Next, I want to make sure that I'm familiar with what my unique indicators are that I am maybe spiraling or getting dysregulated. And the Personal Chaos Index is one of my favorite tools for that. So if you haven't done that yet, Google that. It's amazing. Then the third step is the making lists of actions that I can apply to my situation, as well as a list of things that I can't control, I can't predict it. And then based on those lists, just take a small action. Just one small action. I can't fix my situation. I can't fix it today. If I could, I would have by now, right? So one small thing. What can I do? What's one action that I can take? And then knowing how to acclimate to a new normal. This is really important. So we know that if we eat junk food, we're not going to feel well. Well, the same is true of whatever we're consuming as far as media is concerned, people we're spending time with, right? Resources that we're looking at, watching the news, which is just incredibly overwhelming. So be mindful, be aware of what you are consuming physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of that, okay? Really important piece of this. One or just a couple last little things here, just applicable, easy strategies. One way for us to start to gain or regain a sense of being, instead of sort of kind of closed into a tunnel, which is how you feel when you're sort of a trauma response. When your nervous system is activated, you're sort of like hyper focus. And so in order to realize how much space you have around you and to feel a sense of safety, notice some sounds that are near you and some sounds that are far away. Pause and listen for each of those sounds. Same thing with your vision. What can you see that's close to you? What can you look out your window and see that's far away? The world is much bigger than whatever is within arm's reach. And that's a really important reminder that we need sometimes. Another thing I'll ask myself whenever I recognize that I'm in black and white thinking is, where does the sand end and the ocean begin? There's no hard lines, right? When it's sunrise, at what point is it light out? At what point is it dark out? There's this very long, gradual transition, and that is so much of our lives, right? So helping us to break out of that all or nothing thinking. And then finally, I wanted to end on this quote. Hope is not a lottery ticket you can sit on the sofa and clutch feeling lucky. It is an axe that you break down doors with in an emergency. So when you hear us talk about the importance of hope, we're not trying to calm someone down, appease somebody, get you to the point where you're just complacent, because that's not really what hope does. Hope is energizing, it's powerful, it empowers you, and is useful. If you are interested in learning more about the hopeful skepticism, here is a website for Jamil Zaki and his book. He's got a guide that you can download that gives you exercises, things that you can do to start practicing that hopeful skepticism. I love it. There's some really great tips and strategies in there. And then definitely grab the book. It is full. Every single chapter has actual research in it. So it's not just, lighthearted, fluffy thinking about things. It is very black and white, evidence-based research that he is pulling from, and he's sharing things from different cultures to help you understand the impacts of cynicism and what we can do as an alternative to that. And that's it.
Great information. I put the hopeful skepticism tool and the link in the chat, so that's there. And then I also, Angela's online course and community for Betrayal, Induced, Existential Crisis is also in the chat. So if you you can click if you're joining us live. So one of the things I made notes, of course. One of the things was make a list of things you cannot control or predict. And I was like, well, it's easy, everything but me. So like, but I mean, so I'm thinking as you're writing kind of the negative list of everything I can't control, you're processing through, I can't control that. I can't control that. Is that kind of how it works? Okay.
Yeah,
So I was like,
absolutely.
I could just make a big anything but me. So, so yeah.
Yes, but sometimes we need to actually go, oh, this is something I can't control, right?
Yeah.
So being able to sit down and look at it and write it down as a reminder, um, yeah, can go a long way.
And then you said the illusion of certainty. And I also thought in control, because that's like, like if I can control this or that person, et cetera, which goes back to the, everything I can't control. But, I think we have this illusion that there's certainty and that we have some modicum of control over whatever, and so giving up those, those frameworks. You mentioned the loss of my beloved dog. He was only 7 and it was unexpected. And I'm going to try not to cry, but why would that be different than most days? And I knew for sure, like I was holding that paradox of, I loved this little, he was my companion, doing everything, and the grief, and I knew it wouldn't last forever, but I was also really keenly aware that I wouldn't give up one moment of the time that we had him, even though it was far too short, and being able to hold both of those. But like I was running down a road, and I just break out in sobs, and I'm just like, it was just, and I just was like, I know that that's part of, like you talked about this as grief statements, and I was like, that's like I'm absolutely in grief, and I know it won't always be like this. I had that, and what we did, and it was really the practical actions of like when we were having those moments, then we would make ourselves, both my husband and I, because we we're both sobbing, we would have to, like, I made myself think of 3 things, 3 good memories to replace the one the one really sad moment. And it, again, it didn't shift everything, but we could shift the focus a bit, and you talked about, yes, we can close ourselves down and make ourselves invulnerable to anything, and we miss out on everything meaningful in life. And so the challenge of being human is, for sure, we're going to hurt, we're going to hurt. It just
Yeah.
goes with the territory. But I love that this is like, looking at, can we look at things differently? And even when you're talking about, the beliefs are not facts. And I was like, oh, I'm looking at those things. I'm going like, I know it's really hard because people, I hear it. They are facts. They have been so, welded in that there is a belief system now that they are facts. And then the other thing, you talked about the negative input, and I see that all the time. Like, but I don't really watch the news much. Now, there's been some things where I'm keenly, focused on, and I am paying attention, but I'm going and getting the information and updates on that. But that negative is just absolutely toxic to me. I have to choose what, I have to filter what comes in, because otherwise, if I'm sitting there with all this negative, that's where my brain goes. I do my meditations in the morning, I set my mindset, I do what I need to do to start my day. Chaos may erupt, and that's, life, but still having that intention of positivity, put in. And I know where the touchstone is that I can go back to. So really super helpful stuff. So we have some questions, and somebody's got their hand raised. I apologize, I'm just gonna lower that because this is recorded and we don't have that on this. But not a question, simply gratitude. I'm feeling this today, so thank you from the bottom of my heart. And this is a great topic. I'm really grateful for this. So thank you. PA spouse over a year since D-Day. I thought I was in good recovery and SAA with sponsors seeing CSAT weekly. My wife was triggered this weekend and I froze instead of supporting her through it. Dissociating is an old defense that I thought I was over. I'm spinning in a shame spiral, both because of not supporting her and my acting out. I reach out to my fellows, but I can't pull myself out.
Gosh, that's so hard. These shame spirals often are coming from very unrealistic expectations that we have of ourselves. It's like we'll have these feelings of sadness or overwhelm, and then we intensify it by going, well, I shouldn't be feeling that way, or I've got to stop feeling that way, instead of making space for it and letting our partners know, hey, I really want to be here for you, and I'm trying my best, and I'm really struggling here today too. How can I help you? Will you give me some very specific things of how I can support you? And can I hold you? And I don't expect you to comfort me, because I'm the one who hurt you, and I've got my people who can comfort me. But I can't go back and change what's happened in the past. Can I be here for you now? Would you like it if I just held you and while we both cried, right? That's the staying present with that emotion, with the overwhelm, because that is life, right? When somebody says, I shouldn't be resentful, that's like saying, well, I should never feel sadness again. Well, I mean, resentment is a feeling, it's an emotion. It's something that you are going to experience. And so telling yourself I shouldn't feel that way is just, it doesn't even compute, right? Maybe you can recognize it as unhelpful, right? True and unhelpful. So I'm feeling resentful. I need to do something about it, right? I need to reach out to my fellows, or I need to be really tender to myself and remind myself of how far I've come, and that my partner hasn't left yet, right? So when I'm feeling resentful towards my partner, well, they're still here, right? There's still something there. And sometimes it can be hard to see, but this is that tension. How do we see life as fully what it is? And that's radical honesty with ourselves. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I was thinking on this one too, because I was like, okay, so uh, when I was very early in recovery programs, someone, and I'm sure it was directed at me. I can't tell you that for sure. I just know I felt it. Said, "I'm a real small package if I'm all wrapped up in myself." Honestly, it took me a little while to figure that one out, but I had that thought with you, is like you've closed in,
Yeah.
instead of, and I know you've reached out to recovery fellows, great, but you've also closed in. And so rather than being able to be there, so, what can you do in this moment? Angela's right. That already happened. You can't make it unhappen. But how can you go right now? I can choose, to be really brave and vulnerable and go, this is not about me. That's the hard part. This is not about me. This is about me doing something. I often use, I need to do the next right thing. Well, that's already done. So in this moment, what would be the next right thing? What can I do? And it may be that your partner is going like, yeah, don't even get near me, don't touch me, but it would be okay to say, I completely dissociate. I know I got into my shame spiral. I'm working on this, not going to promise it won't happen again, but I'm going to find some things that work, that are different. But it feels too like you're dysregulated in this, and so doing some things like even what Angela was talking about, like seeing and hearing, near and far. Well, there's 5 4 3 2 1 where hear things, see things. I mean, and it's regulate. There's a bunch of things that we've talked about that can help regulate, but I like it just. I love that she said, that black and white thinking is, I'm good or I'm bad. No, neither. It's like, I'm a mostly, I don't even like using good and bad. Like I'm a human being who's doing the best that they can. And sometimes I do better than others. And, and I have acceptance of that. Like I just have acceptance of that. And I'm going to strive to do better. But there are moments, and so like, can you give yourself a little bit of grace of like, that wasn't your finest moment, but you have an opportunity in this moment to shift things. So I invite you to go look at your partner in the eyes and express gratitude for that person still being there, that take ownership of what happened, and that you're going to work towards doing something differently the next time this happens. Somebody asked about a PowerPoint. If we email requesting it, do you want to send them to me? Okay.
Yeah, I'm
So
happy to.
yeah, email tami@seekingintegrity.com and I'll get you that. Okay. I'm not trying to explain my betrayer that my boundaries are not to control him. They are to protect me from being I'm sorry, let me start again. I'm trying to explain to my betrayer that my boundaries are not to control him. They are to protect me from being re-traumatized. Obviously, I'm not doing a good job because he keeps talking about rules. How do I explain it to his immature mind?
Okay. So there were a couple of assumptions that I heard in there, but let's start with how do we convey our boundaries? And it starts with us getting really clear, first of all, within ourselves. What's the need that I'm trying to meet here? Because I know I'm not trying to punish my partner. I know I'm not trying to control or manipulate my partner. I'm not trying to make them do something. I just know that I have a need that's not being met. So I have a predicament. So I'm going to bring that predicament to my partner's awareness. I'm going to share with them the solution that I think would help with that predicament. And then I'm going to ask them, do you have any other suggestions that can help with this predicament? So the example I like to give is if somebody's going to be late coming home from work, to be able to explain to them, when you are late coming home from work, my self protection, my brain and my nervous system immediately starts, against my will even, start saying, well, what's going on? Why is my partner late? Am I in danger? Right? And so by the time you arrive home and you're late, you're coming home to a partner who is anxious and nervous and upset and scared and has all these big questions when you just wanted to come home to a nice, relaxed partner. Well, I wanted you to come home to a nice, relaxed partner too. So this is my predicament. I think if you were to call and let me know as soon as you realize that you're going to be late and, whatever other solutions you have in mind, I think that might help. What do you think? What do you think might be a good solution to help if you know you're going to be late so that you can come home and we both get to enjoy our evening, right? And so by presenting it that way, you're starting with your own awareness of what need you are trying to meet and eliciting their collaboration, right? So you're saying, I'm not sure, I have a solution. I think this would work. What do you think? Right? We want to elicit collaboration, and that creates a more equal interaction in the relationship. Nobody wants to be their partner's mother, right? So don't act like their mother. Elicit collaboration. Don't impose, ask for their collaboration. What do you think might help? This is one of my favorite strategies, and it also comes from the nonviolent communication work. If you Google nonviolent communication, there's tons of resources out there that can provide ways of exploring boundaries like that, or expressing boundaries or requests, right? You're making a request.
I love all that. And I was thinking too, like, what is the goal? If the goal is to have a nice relationship, like, yeah, it would be nice to come home to somebody who isn't on fire because like they're completely stressed out and thinking all of the negative things, you know? So if the goal is to move towards each other, then then doing things that are helpful for the relationship, which that would be, makes sense. If it's like, and I hear the immature and I like do the I'm pouting, you're controlling me, and it feels, I always say the system fights change. And so when you start putting, things in place to take care of you, which completely we 100% agree, there's going to be resistance. But it also sounds like somebody who is maybe not too far on the recovery journey and not able to understand that. I mean, addicts have horrible boundaries. I mean, that's why all of this stuff happens. So now you're trying to set a framework, and they're bumping up against it, and so it's going to be, I don't like this. I don't like this, but that doesn't mean, that doesn't mean cave. That means, and it's okay to go, yeah, I understand that that's how you're feeling. The story I'm telling myself is that, you don't understand why I'm doing this. And I understand that I need to do this for me. I'm happy to talk about other options and things like that. But if it's just like remove all the boundaries so that they can go back to, that doesn't help anybody. So, but it's hard. There really is. The system will fight change. So, okay. I want an explanation of why my husband acted out in the first place.
Hmm.
That goes
So
back to that first, yeah.
yeah, the why question, the thing about why is the answers you may get to any why question, whether it's from your partner or from a coworker or from yourself even, will evolve over time. As you mature, as you gain new perspectives, as you learn more about yourself, all of those things are going to shift and evolve the answer to a why question. So starting with a why question or saying, I can't heal until I know why, well, you aren't going to know the why. You may know a why, you may know some whys, but the why is a really complex and likely unknowable answer.
And I often say the why is not the most important question. I know lots of people that know the answer or part of the answer to the why, and they're still acting out. So it doesn't change anything. What do I need to do today, and how do we move forward? I've been in recovery for decades, and I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, I had another piece of the why. Doesn't mean I haven't been in recovery the entire time, but I was just like, oh, that makes sense, but I wouldn't have even been able to take any of that in early on. And any why that your husband gives you right now, you're going to think it's ridiculous. Because you would never do that. So it's going to, like, that's your reason. Like, it won't help because it will be so flimsy. The stupid stuff that we tell ourselves, like justification. I mean, it's ridiculous and it's compartmentalized, and that's why it's so it's a maladaptive coping mechanism. Addiction is a maladaptive coping mechanism. Sex addiction is a form of addiction, whether it's alcohol, gambling, gaming, whatever it is. We don't know how to do life well. And so we find other ways that help us help. I'm using massive quotes, help us until they turn around and bite us. But yeah, and honestly, there are some addicts that I've said to them, thank goodness you're an addict. They had such horrific upbringings. Like it was just horrible. And it was probably the only way they were able to dissociate and, get to be an adult. So of interest, like I said, kind of like, oh, that was interesting. I'm glad I know that now, but didn't change anything. So yeah, I'm sorry if you focus on that. Whatever he says is going to be really it's going to be ridiculous, and it won't make any sense to you. So,
Yeah, and I would
and that's
also,
go ahead, please. Sorry.
I was gonna say, some of the participants that I work with and some of my clients are widows, and
Oh yeah,
they found out after their partner
yes,
died, they're never going to get a why,
yeah.
right? But does that mean that they're going to stop living? Does that mean that they can't thrive in life and create a life that they want for themselves? So the why question, we just put so much emphasis on it. Is it important? Yes. Does it need to be examined? Absolutely, right? It helps us start to look at, are there some things that we can do to put into place? But if we think that we're ever going to get a complete the why, we'll only ever have just glimpses of something. And it's important for us to keep that in mind. Why is it that some of the little girls at that camp got swept away and some
I
didn't?
know. Yeah,
I mean, like,
because
I
I'm
just
watching.
can't,
I know.
so, well, there aren't good enough answers.
Mm-mm,
There will never be a good enough answer.
mm-mm.
So,
Okay, betrayer here. How can I support my betrayed partner? She has endured countless broken promises, unfulfilled intentions, and just plain unwarranted turmoil. I want desperately to support her, but I have become someone she doesn't want support from, which I understand. Why would a victim ask the abuser for help? How might I help and support her? I'm going to tell you this first. Stop being the person of countless broken promises. Lean into recovery. Otherwise, it's just going to be more, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Like until you stop those behaviors, any words that you say are useless. So I don't I don't know what you have tried so far. A higher level of help. Email TAMI at seekingintegrity.com. I will give you, whatever they say, soup to nuts. I will give you everything I can think of for your situation. But yeah, until you stop the problematic behavior, and recovery takes 2 to 5 years. We've done webinars and things on that. So until you stop those things, you're right. You are just, like it's meaningless to give her words. So I'm using gender, sorry. But anyway, thoughts?
yeah, I mean, integrity is the only safety, right? Only integrity can bring safety. If there's any deception, if there's any manipulation, if there's any risky behavior, any of that, it just takes all the safety away, right? So defensiveness, minimizing it, like all the things, even if it's not a sexual behavior, you create a tremendous amount of unsafety by being unpredictable or by pushing back rather than leaning in, by not taking accountability, by not being fully responsible and owning your responsibility. So integrity is what brings safety.
So the next one is, this is from a spouse of a PA. How do I navigate the lack of validation that my partner is not able to provide me due to deeply seated childhood wounds and shame, low self-esteem, depression, numerous behavior addictions? How do I navigate the issues with communications due to him not being able to communicate properly due to those reasons? I also want to note that I'm doing a lot of self-healing with learning and seeing a trauma certified therapist now.
Good work. Good work. Keep doing everything that you can do for yourself. If you and your partner have been in a car wreck because your partner was driving drunk and both of you are in critical care at the hospital, your partner is there in their own critical care and they have to lean on and rely on their own care team, just like you need to rely on and trust your care team for validation, for nutrition, for support, for all of that, because your partner's in intensive care. And same way, it's very difficult for you to provide any type of support and validation and all that for your partner because you're in your own intensive care. So being able to recognize there's only so much that you can do when we are needing validation and we can't get it from the place that has historically been safe to get that validation from. When that source goes away, that doesn't mean our need goes away. It means we need to find healthy outlets for feeling that validation, for remembering our own value, right? Seeing ourselves through the eyes of somebody who admires and respects us so that we remember, oh yeah, I really am a great person and I'm lovable and I have so much to offer. And I can love myself first, and I can let these other safe people love me. And that's where we have that very healthy interdependence of personal identity, because validation is important. We need it. I think if we go through life saying, I shouldn't need validation, I think we're really causing a lot of harm by doing that.
And I love that you're doing a lot of self-healing. Like,
Mhm.
yay.
Mhm.
Okay, so the next one, why would I ever try to rebuild a relationship with someone who has done something so despicable?
Yeah. So this is all about taking calculated risks. If you choose to stay in your relationship, you would do it with strategy. If you choose not to, I would encourage you to ask yourself, if I leave the relationship, how would I do that with integrity? If I stay in the relationship, how would I do that with integrity? So I feel like the question is, why would I stay in this relationship? Well, that's for you to decide. What are your values? Why would you stay in that relationship? So consider your values. That will help you to make decisions that are based within your integrity. So staying with integrity or leaving with integrity. Either way, it's based on your values. So it's an opportunity to examine what your values are.
And I'm pulling because when you were saying that, I was like, we had a whole series on that. Should I stay or should I go? And it was stay with a plan, stay within your integrity, whatever you choose. It's like, honestly, it has to be every person's decision on whether they stay or go. So check out that series. It was 4 webinars. I put it together in a blog because I was tired of sending 4 different links. So check that blog out. It had all the links to it. And then we just did a recently a therapeutic separation. That was a fantastic webinar on that. But we also did collaborative divorce. I mean, so we've got a lot of resources if you choose to move in that direction. We want healing for each of you, both of you, whatever that looks like. Okay, the next one.
While you're
I'm
looking
a
at
bit,
that, I want to say one
yeah,
more thing about that
please.
question. When I hear anybody ask, why would I stay? Or
Mm,
why would I anything? That's a grief statement.
mm,
It's being
thank you. You're
posed
right.
as a question. It's a grief statement. It hurts. You're grieving that your relationship is what it is right now. That is a grief statement being posed as a question. So be on the lookout for those. Start to notice when you're asking questions like that, you're grieving. Those are pain-filled questions. Okay, go ahead with the next
Thank you.
question.
No, thank you for pointing that out too. Because I often say, I mean, there's grief of the loss of the relationship you thought you had, grief of the loss of the spouse you thought you had, grief of like all of the years where like it's so confusing and painful. So I hope regardless of what you choose that you have support, on this journey, and that I'm glad you're here, but that this is not supportive in that there's somebody who can collaborate and support you. And to a previous question too, it's like with the, it's like why we need addicts who are on the same journey, and they're the lifeline for other addicts, and partners, they're the lifeline for other partners because they're going through it, they've been through it, so you want that, supportive help. So do you have time for one more or two
Yeah,
more?
let's do it.
Okay, all right. I'm a betrayed male spouse. I'm 13 months out from D-Day, and there's good recovery for both of us. I'm wondering about insights you may have about balance and recovery. I participate in about 10 hours a week with therapy groups and podcasts, and I'm beginning to see a link between how frequently I'm triggered and how recently I just participated in some recovery work. I don't want to ignore the work, but I'm wondering if a break from the work could be helpful.
So there's the operative word. What is helpful? And what I'm hearing you say is that you're starting to notice that it's helpful for your meetings or your exposure to different recovery activities to be within a certain time frame. And if it goes beyond that time frame, you seem to be triggered more easily or more often. So the question is, what is helpful? So pay attention. What do you notice if you go every other day versus every day? And make adjustments based on what's helpful. And I love hearing that you're starting to have that awareness. That's a really important piece of your recovery. That's where you're making informed decisions.
And I love this. And I often say to partners, like, do something that has got nothing to do with your addicted spouse, do something that has nothing to do with addiction recovery. Like, take a mental break. I had a friend that talked about she was going to see a trauma therapist, completely different. It wasn't about betrayal. But she was like, I just kept reliving the trauma because I kept talking about that. So she chose she chose a coach so that the coach could help her. Here's where I am and I want to move forward, and that helped her. So I love what Angela's saying about, like, pay attention. Well, this is helpful. That's not so helpful. Okay, adjust. Find the things that are working for you. Lean into the things that are useful. Yeah, with recovery, like, I tout 90 meetings in 90 days a lot. Well, that's the first, I've been doing this a long time. Do I go to 90 meetings in 90 days anymore? No, so there's different phases and different places. Find what's working for you in this moment. So, okay. How does one get the betrayer to stop playing the victim?
Mm. So the person who cheated feels like a victim. That is often coming from black and white thinking, all or nothing, good or bad, um, shame, right? It's a coping strategy. It's a reaction to a discomfort or an anxiety that is coming from within. And so being able to ask, what's really hard about your situation right now? What are what are your fears? What are you afraid of? Um, what are some of the actions that you're taking to address those fears? Um, what are you doing when you feel like you're a victim or when you feel like something bad is happening to you or being done to you? What are you doing when that happens, right? So you make space for it instead of saying, you shouldn't be feeling that way. You shouldn't, you're the one who cheated. How could you be the victim, right? Like this is a very natural response, but it doesn't get us anywhere. So instead, responding with what's going on there? What are you afraid of? What's the hurt? What are you longing for? Um, and what are you doing about it? That takes anybody out of a victim mode and puts them in the seat of responsibility because it's their own personal awareness and their own personal choice to respond to what they're now aware of.
And I'm going to add, and that's kind of that is not something that's very early in recovery. I'm just going to be honest. That is, like, this is a defensive move. Like, I'm going to make it all about me. Shame is all about me. Like, I feel so shameful. I'm so horrible. It's still all about me. It's not paying attention. So this is something that someone who's on a recovery path can learn. And it's okay for you to go, the story I'm telling myself right now. I love that one. The story I'm telling myself right now is that you're feeling like a victim, and I'm, sorry. I'm happy to talk to you about that. But it also, if it shifts the conversation away from what you're asking, it's a highly effective manipulative action. And so if they're really working a recovery program, this you should start to see a change. If they're not, then to me it's you know extra boundaries on taking care of myself so that I'm not falling into that trap of, like, well, let's talk about you. No. So,
Yeah, don't take
okay.
the hook.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have time for a couple more? So
I
we, like,
do, of
okay,
course.
good. All right. We don't normally do this. So, betrayed partner, I'm struggling to move past the many feelings about the injustice of stolen time and having been used. I so
Mhm.
have
Yeah.
compassion. That's massive grief.
Yeah, it makes me think about one of the clients that I've worked with who their partner never would never wanted children. And then she found out that he had been, unfaithful and their whole marriage, and didn't find out until well after childbearing abilities in her body. And she's left with just a tremendous amount of grief that she will never get the opportunity to be that kind of a mother. And she always wanted children, right? That's a grief. That's a loss. You can't get that back.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get a pet back that has died,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, this is the human experience. It's grief. It's grief. And it's letting it hit you in waves. And then it's realizing, okay, and there's more to life in addition to this, right? There's other things. This is one part of my life. This is one aspect of reality. There's so many things going on around the world right now that I can put my attention on, my awareness on as well.
Yeah, and you're right. You can't get that time back. So you can't make this unhappen. I often think of, if I'm hanging around in the past, wallowing in the past or future tripping, I'm missing out on the present, and it sounds trite, but the present is a gift, present gift. So to me, it's like it gives me a visual, though I see a wrapped gift if I'm paying attention to the present. So it gives me an opportunity to go, I have this moment, but I'm not minimizing, and grief is a process, and it's going to take time, and it'll ebb and flow. Get support, please, get support about that. Debbie McCrae did a 2-part webinar on grief on our previously recorded webinars that could be useful for you. But again, it's a process. Okay. How do I deal with my betrayer constantly shutting down, either not validating me or becoming aggressive and argumentative? And then he shuts it down with, I am selfish. I have one foot out the door. How do I protect myself from being re-injured until either I make a decision to leave or he does the actual recovery work?
Okay, so let's end on this one.
Okay.
This one is asking, how can I get my partner, reword the question, what is it that she's wanting to get her partner to do while she's waiting for them to mature in their recovery?
How do I protect myself from being re-injured until I make a decision to leave or he does the actual recovery work?
Okay. So it's more about, how do I protect myself? So when you're looking at protecting yourself, it goes back to being aware of what are the needs that are not being met, right? If I need protection, it's because some need is not being met. If I feel fully validated and my partner comes in and they say some kind of a terrible comment, but it's like, I know better, then I'm not unsafe by that comment, right? So when we don't feel safe, there's some kind of a need that's not being met. So being able to examine, what is it about my situation that feels unsafe? What is the need that's not being met? And how can I get those needs met in safe, healthy, appropriate ways, other than from my partner who's not safe and able to meet those needs for me yet? I hope that makes sense, because it's one of those things where it's like, just because your partner can't do that for you doesn't make those needs go away. They still have to be met. And it's our responsibility, because there are needs, right? If I'm hungry, it's my responsibility to go feed myself. Same thing with any of our needs. If my partner cannot give me or meet or fill some of those needs, then it's my responsibility to go and find nourishment somewhere else in a very safe, healthy place, right? Within your values and within your integrity.
Yeah. And lean into the support resources. I feel like there are other people that will help hold up the space and go, here's a container. We're here for you. So
Yeah.
lean in. Okay.
Yeah.
So Angela will send me the slides tomorrow. It's late on the East Coast. So, and if you would like them, TAMI@seekingintegrity.com, and just let me know that you're looking for the slides. And anything else we can be helpful with. Angela, always fabulous information. So grateful for you. And all of the great resources you bring to everywhere, but particularly to the Seeking Integrity platform. So really grateful.
Yes,
Thanks everyone
absolutely.
for joining. Thanks for the
Yeah.
questions.
Good questions
Bye.
tonight. Bye, everyone.